In the quiet suburban town of Glenwood, the Parsons family was forever altered by a single nightmarish event. It began on a crisp autumn evening when their beloved golden retriever, Max, bolted from their backyard, chasing after an elusive, shadowy figure. Despite their frantic search and countless posters, Max was gone, as if swallowed by the darkness. Months turned into a year. The Parsons grieved but held on to hope. Life resumed its slow, uneventful pace until one evening when, out of the blue, the doorbell rang. Mrs. Parsons opened the door to find Max sitting on their front step, his golden fur matted, but his eyes unmistakably familiar. Overcome with relief and joy, the Parsons rushed to embrace their long-lost friend. But something was off. Max seemed unchanged in appearance but carried an unsettling aura. The joy of his return was tainted by an inexplicable discomfort. Mr. Parsons, trying to ease his wife's fears, reassured her that Max was simply disoriented from his time away. At first, Max behaved like the old Max, playful, affectionate, and loyal. But subtle changes began to surface. The once gentle creature showed signs of aggression at odd moments, growling at shadows and snapping at anyone who tried to approach him while he ate. He avoided human contact, retreating to dark corners of the house, his eyes glowing unnaturally in the dark. One evening, the Parsons' youngest daughter, Emily, was playing with Max in the backyard. As dusk fell, Max's behavior grew increasingly erratic. His once loving gaze turned cold, and he started to bark frenetically at the encroaching darkness. Emily, terrified, called for her parents. As they rushed outside, they found Max standing still, his body trembling with an unnatural rigidity. The next day, strange things began happening. Objects moved on their own, and a sense of pervasive dread seemed to follow Max. The family's once warm home felt chilled, the air thick with an oppressive weight. Mr. Parsons tried to ignore the unsettling occurrences, but he couldn't dismiss the feeling that something was profoundly wrong. One stormy night, as lightning illuminated the sky, the Parsons were jolted awake by blood-curdling screams from Emily's room. Rushing in, they found Emily in tears, her face pale with terror. Max was in the room, his fur bristled, eyes glowing an eerie crimson. He stared at Emily with a malevolent intensity that froze the family in place. Mr. Parsons tried to grab Max, but the dog leaped with supernatural speed, pinning him against the wall. The family watched in horror as Max's mouth stretched unnaturally wide, revealing rows of jagged, razor-sharp teeth. The room filled with an unearthly growl that seemed to come from the very depths of hell. Desperate, Mrs. Parsons grabbed a silver crucifix from the wall and thrust it towards Max. The dog's eyes flickered, and he howled in pain, a sound that seemed to echo from another realm. In a final act of defiance, Max lunged at Mrs. Parsons, but the crucifix's power forced him back. The beast let out one last guttural roar before collapsing into a convulsing heap. The family fled their home, taking refuge with neighbors. By dawn, the house was empty, save for Max's lifeless form, now eerily still. But as they watched from a distance, they saw the ground around the house crack open, and something dark and writhing emerged, enveloping the entire property. It was as if the very earth was reclaiming what had been tainted. The Parsons never returned to Glenwood. The house was abandoned, its dark history becoming local legend. Some say that on stormy nights, if you listen closely, you can hear the eerie howl of Max, forever trapped between the worlds of the living and the damned.